All right, we will call the Senate Judiciary Committee to order. Will the Secretary please take the roll? Here, thank you so much. Please mark those senators who are not present when they arrive. We are going to take today's agenda items in reverse order, starting with 316, and then we'll go to 266 after a brief 1-minute recess. All right, now that we have answered a few little logistical questions, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Senator, you can stay there. I'm literally going to turn the gavel over to Senator Orenshaw for the bill hearing on SB 316.
Thank you very much, Chair Scheibel. With that, we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 316. And Senator Scheibel, thank you very much for presenting this measure today.
Thank you, Senator Orenshaw. My name, of course, is Melanie Scheibel. I'm the state senator for District 9, and it is my pleasure to be in front of you all presenting Senate Bill 316. Senate Bill 316 makes some minor changes in the way that certain data is reported within the state of Nevada regarding certain crimes. And joining me today is Victoria Gonzalez from the Nevada Department of Sentencing Policy. To put it simply, every prosecuting agency in the state is currently required to submit an annual report to the Attorney General regarding all of the murder and voluntary manslaughter cases that they handle. The information that they have to provide to the Attorney General is listed in NRS 178.750, also known as page 2 of your bill. What has not traditionally, or what was not included before in that list, was the name of the defendant or the case number. In reviewing the historical minutes, records of the first implementation of this statute, I could find no reason for that. But what I have learned, and I think Ms. Gonzalez will speak to this as well, is that the exclusion of that information makes the data much less useful than it would be if we had that data included. Essentially, by reporting all of that data minus the defendant's name and case number, the data becomes aggregated in a way that is not very helpful. So, for example, if one of the larger jurisdictions reports that they handled 20 murder cases and that 30 of the defendants were men and that 40 of the victims were women, you still wouldn't be able to tell at what rate men are murdering women because you can't do the overlap of which of those are regarding the same case or which of them might be cases where a woman murdered another woman. So by including this information, we'll be able to actually utilize the data for the original intended purpose, which is to study any trends in murder prosecutions in the state of Nevada. And I also want to point out that the name and case number of these defendants is already public information. That is something that every Nevadan is entitled to access through the judicial websites or through judicial records because the name and case number are already public information. We're just trying to avoid requiring the people analyzing this data to play a game of match and try to figure out which cases belong with which statistics. I'm also going to present or suggest to you a truly conceptual amendment. So conceptual, you don't even have a piece of paper because it is a concept. And the concept is to move this reporting from the Attorney General's office to the Department of Sentencing Policy. When this policy was first passed in 2003, there was no Department of Sentencing Policy. And now that we have not only a department, but a department with a fantastic director and incredible analysts who do really good work in keeping a clearinghouse of criminal justice data, it only makes sense that they would take these reports and analyze them and utilize them. So with your permission, Senator Orenshaw, I'll turn it over to Ms. Gonzalez to provide a little bit more context, and then we can answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Scheibel. Ms. Gonzalez, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Victoria Gonzalez, Victoria Gonzalez. I'm the director of the Nevada Department of Sentencing Policy. And in talking with Senator Scheibel, this is consistent with our mission, which is to provide reliable criminal justice data to ensure that our criminal justice system is data-driven. Being data-driven is what's going to promote a criminal justice system that is equitable and reliable. What's important for this too is, as you know, we are nonpartisan. We don't have a policy that we are trying to advance. We are here to provide the data so that whatever your policy position, you can use our data to ensure that the criminal justice system is doing what we have intended it and want it to do for us. And so one of the other things I've thought of too is that we'll be able to cross-reference this with the prison data that we're already collecting and getting this additional information, and then bring it back to stakeholders such as the Interim Judiciary Committee, bring regular reports about what we're finding and the outcomes for this. And so we are absolutely able and willing to take on this task, and looking forward to being able to provide this information in a useful way that the stakeholders can use to make those data-driven policy decisions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez. And Chair, with your permission, I'd like to turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Harris.
Gavel over. Questions? Committee members? Okay. Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing for testimony in support of Senate Bill 316. Anyone here in Carson City?
Good morning, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Erica Roth, Ericaroth, on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office, testifying in support. This bill just simply makes sense. I'll keep it short. I think that the truly conceptual amendment that was also presented this morning regarding moving this to the Sentencing Commission also makes sense. It's a logical bill. We should be collecting as much data as we can to be making the right decisions. So I thank Chair Scheibel for bringing this forward, and Executive Director Gonzalez as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Hocking, Jodihockking, and I'm here representing Return Strong. We work directly with impacted people, and many of our members, most are on death row, and this is really a great way to see data become more transparent. And so we are here today to just say we're in support, love this kind of cleanup in the past to make it better working, and also with the very conceptual idea. So we're here in support of SP 316. Thank you. Have a great day. Nick's not here to tell me to.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. John Pirro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We support this measure as well. We think data is going to move us in the right spot so that we know where we're at and what's going on.
Okay. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas who'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 316?
Hello,
ahead.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead when
Hi,
you're ready.
Hi, my name is Stuart Chang, Stewart Chang. I'm a professor of law at the William S. Boyd School of Law at UNLV. I've been asked to testify on behalf of the bill by the Nevada Coalition Against the Death Penalty. The death penalty is quite a large issue in Nevada. Data as of April of 2022 shows that Nevada had the 9th highest death row population in the United States among states. On a more local level here in Clark County, in the last decade, Clark County has been consistently within the top 10 of prosecuting counties in the nation, which has inmates ending up on death row. Now in Nevada, 35% of the death row population is black, whereas only 9 to 10% of the population at large in the state is black. These racial disparities in the death row population has been a concern of Nevada for some time, and in the 1990s, the Nevada Supreme Court recommended that information be gathered to uncover potential bias in capital cases. And in 2003, the legislature passed NRS 178.750, which does mandate the DA to file annual reports with the Attorney General's office with that type of demographic data. Now, unfortunately, right now, the demographic data is in aggregate form, as Senator Scheibel had noted, and is virtually useless. So this is why the information that includes specific information about defendant names, case numbers, would allow better tracking and precision in terms of whether this data regarding racial disparities can actually be collected. This is a good bill that will make record keeping or the statistical analysis a lot more effective, and will give greater transparency in the criminal process. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Chair and members of the committee, thank you. Nicholas Cote, NICH, OLAS, COTE, Western Regional Organizer, Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty, speaking today in support of Senate Bill 316. Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty is a national network of political and social conservatives who question whether capital punishment aligns with conservative principles and values. More and more conservatives are reaching the conclusion that the system is marked by inefficiency, inequity, and inaccuracy. Last month, conservative legislators in Oklahoma called for a moratorium on the death penalty, and just yesterday, a bipartisan group of legislators in Ohio introduced a bill to repeal the death penalty. To be clear, Senate Bill 316 would not pause or repeal the death penalty, but it would produce greater transparency and accountability regarding this ultimate and irreversible exercise of government power. In particular, one of the questions conservatives are asking about the death penalty is whether it is arbitrarily and unfairly administered by the government. Senate Bill 316 would help provide the public with more information to assess racial bias in the application of capital punishment. Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty urges your support of Senate Bill 316. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the Vice Chair and members of the committee, and thank you to Senator Scheibel for bringing this forward. My name is Mark Bettencourt, MarkBettencourt. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Coalition Against the Death Penalty. We're here in support of SB 316 and are eager to see the legislature considering this modest and very important, crucial piece of policy. As an individual whose family has been impacted by the legal system, both with multiple family members facing incarceration and facing the loss of an uncle as a victim of violent crime, it is really important that we know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why. And this bill really goes a long way to that, and it also goes a long way to building a little bit better transparency and accountability for our state actors, and is going to allow community advocates, impacted families, members of the legislature, and other folks that are interested to stay informed and to know what's actually going on in our justice system. The statute this bill is modifying has existed for decades, as you all have heard, so this really is just going to realize the original legislature's intent of this bill. Adding the names and case numbers to this annual reporting is going to make it easier to track not only individuals, but trends in our justice system. Simply put, we don't know what we don't know. So SB 316 will make the time spent producing these reports more worthwhile. It's going to inform the decisions we make and improve our accountability and transparency while hopefully adding no fiscal burden. So I ask you all to support SB 316 today, and thank you all for your time.
Okay, BPS, can we go ahead and go to the phone, see if there's anyone who'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 316?
Chair, we have no callers to testify in support.
All right, we'll bring it back here to Carson City. Is there anyone in Carson City who'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 316? Okay, how about in Las Vegas? Anyone in Las Vegas who'd like to testify in opposition? BPS, will you go ahead and check the phone lines, please? BPS, can we check if there's anyone on the phone who'd like to testify in opposition?
Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition.
Okay, we will come back again to Carson City, see if there's anyone who would like to testify in the neutral position to Senate Bill 316.
Victoria Gonzalez, Director of the Department of Sentencing Policy, testifying in the neutral position, but again, wanted to emphasize our mission for promoting data-driven policy in the state for the criminal justice system. And again, we're ready and willing to take on this task, and really wanted to applaud this legislature, as I think we're really, truly moving towards data-driven policy in a way that I don't think we've seen ever. And just wanted to thank you for that, and then providing the resources to those who are collecting and analyzing the data, and that you are directing agencies and stakeholders to collect and report that data back. Thank you.
Anyone in Las Vegas like to testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 316? Okay, BPS, can we check the phones for anyone in the neutral position, please?
Yes, Chair, there are 0 callers to testify in the neutral.
Thank you so much. Chair Scheibel, if you want to make closing comments, or we can, okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing then on Senate Bill 316, and I will pass the gavel back to the chair.
All right. Thank you, Senators, for your help with that presentation. And now it is my pleasure to welcome a first-time Judiciary presenter, Senator Pezzina, to the table to present SB 266, and I will now open the hearing.
Thank you so much, Chair Scheibel, Vice Chair Harris, and the Committee on Judiciary. It's exciting to be here. Thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to present. For the record, my name is Julie Pezzina, and I represent Senate District 12 in Las Vegas and Henderson. It's my pleasure to come before you today to present Senate Bill 266, which excludes certain entry fees for participation in a gaming contest or tournament from being included in the gross revenue of a casino or resort under specific circumstances. With me today, I have several representatives of the gaming industry who will provide expert testimony as to the rationale for bringing Senate Bill 266 forward and the circumstances under which its provisions will apply. Before I turn the discussion over to the experts, though, I wanted to briefly go over the contents of the bill. Now, as we all know, casinos and resorts frequently hold gaming contests and tournaments for which participants do pay an entry fee. Currently, those entry fees are considered part of the gross revenue for a casino and so are included in the calculation of how much the casino must pay for its monthly licensing fee. Section 1 of this bill exempts contests and tournaments entry fees from being included in these calculations if the fees are used in any of the following ways. 1, they're designated and paid, in addition to the employee's regular pay, as employee compensation to an employee who assists with the organization or operation of the contest. Number 2, they're designated for donation to a qualifying nonprofit, charitable, or fraternal organization and are remitted to such. Number 3, they're added to the payoff schedule of the contest or tournament and paid as a prize to a contestant in the current or a future contest. And finally, number 4, they're added to an account to fund guaranteed payouts of future contests or tournaments and are dispersed accordingly. Now, that really constitutes the entirety of the bill, and if approved, it would take effect on July 1st of this year. The reason for exempting entry fees under these specific circumstances is that none of this money ever actually comes to the casino as income. It's either used to pay employees, as a donation, or as prize money. It falls into one of those three buckets. Please note that we also have a friendly amendment provided by the Gaming Control Board through the Attorney General's office, and that should be located in Nellis to review. With your permission, Chair, Vice Chair, Committee, I'd like to ask that Mike Alonzo, Barry Lieberman, and Virginia Valentine offer some specific examples of instances where these exemptions would apply. And we also have Jack Effel available as well to answer any subject matter questions that the committee may have in addition to the rest of us. Thank you so much.
Chair Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, for the record, I'm Michael Alonso, and I'm here on behalf of Caesars Entertainment in support of SB 266. We very much appreciate Senator Pezzina sponsoring this legislation and appreciate the opportunity to be here to present this bill with her. We believe it's a cleanup bill for legislation that was passed in 2019. As noted in Senator Pezzina's remarks, Virginia Valentine, President and CEO of the Nevada Resort Association, is here. Barry Lieberman is with us from Las Vegas, and he's with South Point. And Jack Effel, who's Vice President of the World Series of Poker, is on Zoom while he's traveling, and Jack will be available to answer any technical questions. You should all have the amendment that Senator Pezzina alluded to on Nellis, which she considers to be a friendly amendment and was provided by the Gaming Control Board. By way of a little background, prior to the 2019 legislative session, entry fees were not taxable, entry fees to contests and tournaments. In 2019, the Control Board and the Control Board sought to make entry fees taxable and worked with the industry, and the legislature passed a bill in 2019 to make them taxable. Since that became the law, it became apparent between the industry and the Gaming Control Board that there was a different interpretation on what was taxable within the entry fees. And since we found that differing interpretation, we've worked with the Gaming Control Board on language to try to clarify that the portions of the entry fees that the operators do not get to keep is not taxable. I want to be clear that the Gaming Control Board isn't here supporting or opposing this bill, but worked with us on the language that the board would be comfortable with if this measure moves forward. By way of additional background, tournaments and contests have been operated by licensees for many years prior to the change in the law in 2019. And operators all do this differently, but generally it's very similar in the way they charge players in these tournaments. The entry fee, and then the players charge an additional fee that is not retained by the licensees and is designated for specific purposes that the players know about and agree to in advance. There's a paper trail for each tournament that designates the fees and what they're used for. Working off the amendment, you will note that the term gross revenue would not include the cash received as entry fees for the right to participate in a contest or tournament if the cash is designated as one of those four items we have been discussing. First one is in G1, it's the employee compensation that Senator Pezzina alluded to. And if you work off of the amendment, that amendment makes the language clear that it has to in fact be paid as compensation to an employee of a licensee who's involved in the organization or operation and is additional or to regular compensation. That's something that, just by way of a little background, in a cash poker game, you're using chips that have monetary value. In a tournament or contest, you're using chips that don't have any monetary value. So as this has evolved over many years, this has been going on since way before 2019. You had a situation in tournaments where the players didn't have the chips available, and that affected how the employees received tips. And so the operators would require those fees, as you would see in a sort of a mandatory tip at certain restaurants or convention rooms, where the patron is paying that, and that money is going to the employees as additional compensation. Senator Pezzina also spoke to the nonprofit or charity, and to put this in more context, charities come to operators and ask them to run charitable tournaments for them. So they run a poker tournament for them. There's a fee that the patrons are paying that goes to the charity after the prizes and everything else. And that fee we're being taxed upon right now, and that money, we're just a conduit. That money goes directly to the charity. And then the other two buckets that we're talking about, the addition to the payoff schedule or contest or of a contest or tournament that is fixed or is progressive in nature, and the fund guaranteed payouts. Those are all monies that go back to the players. And I'll give you one example on the fixed payoff schedule or progressive. It could be a bad beat. So the casino could have a rule that if you have the second highest hand, for example, you have, and I'm not a poker player, but 4 aces, and somebody beats you with the highest hand, then that would be considered a bad beat, and there would be money in the promotion to give to that player that just lost money for having second hand. And that's to try to promote the game and to keep people wanting to play this. This is an interesting subculture of poker players that follow these tournaments around. They go from casino to casino and follow the tournaments based on the terms and the rules of those tournaments. And the final one is the fund to guaranteed payouts. So if we advertise, and we charge the player, and this is all laid out, if we advertise a $5,000 tournament and 5 people show up, or 4 people show up, and it's $4,000 in entry fees, and that $1,000 is missing because we didn't have enough players, we take the money out of that bucket and make sure there's a $5,000 guaranteed payout for that particular tournament as advertised, so that the players get what they thought they were getting. And just to follow up on the Gaming Control Board's language in the amendment, we believe it just makes it clear that the designated amounts that we're talking about are taxable outside of a live contest or tournament, which means interactive poker or online poker. In other words, these deductions from revenue would not be available to the operators outside of a live tournament or contest unless the Gaming Commission passes a regulation that authorizes the deductions from revenue. And the rest of the Gaming Control Board's changes are really just to ensure that if we divert that money for some reason from the designated buckets, that they would be taxable in the month that they were collected. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Virginia Valentine.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel and members of the committee, and I want to start by thanking the sponsor, Senator Pizzina. Mr. Alonso did such a thorough job of explaining that. I don't think I will take up too much of your time other than to emphasize that the amount that we are trying to exclude in this bill is revenue that is not kept by the casino. It's paid out, as point's been made, to charities, employees, or players, and even the definition of which employees is, I think, very narrow. So we just thank you for your time today, and I'll not repeat what you've already heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else you wanted to present?
I believe Chair Barry Lieberman.
Okay, perfect.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Barry Lieberman, B-A-R-R-Y-L-I-E-B-E-R-M-A-N, and I represent the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. I had a little speech, but Mike Alonso covered almost all of it, and this committee is, I know, is very busy, so I will limit my remarks. One of the things I want the committee to understand is that in the definition of 463.0161 for gross revenue, with respect to gaming revenue, it has always been the position of the state that if the casino doesn't get the revenue, it is not subject to taxation. And you can look at section 2 of 463.0161, and you see things like counterfeit money or chips are not included in gross revenue. Winnings where markers are not paid are not included in gross revenue. Uncollected baccarat commissions are also excluded from gross revenue. So this is really not a novel concept. It was just, as Mike explained, when the legislation was passed in 2019, the industry assumed that money it did not get would not be taxable. The Gaming Control Board had a different interpretation, but we've been able to discuss and resolve these differences to get a bill that pretty much everyone agrees to. And it really is a win-win bill for everybody because the dealers deserve payments in lieu of the tips that they would normally make in a cash game. And so the licensee basically charges as part of that entry fee a certain amount that the players are told are going to go to the dealers and other tournament personnel who work on that tournament. With respect to charitable organizations, there was a disincentive for the casinos to hold these charitable tournaments because the amounts that were paid out to the charities were not deductible from gross revenue. In other words, they were included and we would have to pay the tax on it. This bill solves that problem. And as the third point Mr. Alonso raised is the jackpots, future prize payments, or if we guarantee tournaments, we can use money that's designated to cover those shortfalls, and that money would also be excluded from gross revenue. In summary, this is a bill that rectifies a problem that arose out of the 2019 bill and is really a win-win for everybody. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
All right, is that everybody presenting the bill?
Yes, thank you so much. We also have by Zoom Jack Effel in case there's any incredibly technical questions, as he's a subject matter expert, but we're done with the presentation portion. Thank you.
All right, any questions from, all right, Senator Dondero-Loop.
Thank you very much. When Mr. Alonso, when you said if the hotel, for example, blah, 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 does each hotel make their own rules within this, within whatever tournament they're doing? Or are there a set of rules for them to use as a parameter?
Chair Scheibel, through you and to you, or to you and
Please
through
go
you,
direct.
Senator Dondero-Loop, the gross revenue rules are the same for everybody, but the rules within the poker rooms of the various casinos, so the bad beat promotion, for example, or the size of the tournament guarantee, or the other promotions. I mean, there are other promotions beyond the bad beat one that I use, but that's a big one. Those are all different based on the casino and the type of poker room that it is.
Thank you very much. I'm going to get this. I'm going to learn this before I'm done. Thank you.
All right, other questions from members of the committee? I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you so much for your presentation. And we'll go now to testimony in support of SB 266. Anybody wishing to testify in Las Vegas or Carson City is invited up to the table now. And we'll start here in Carson City whenever you're ready.
Hi, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Sasha Stevenson for the record here for MGM. I won't reiterate the great points that my colleagues have made, but just want to thank the sponsor and let you know that MGM is fully in support of this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Russell Rowe here on behalf of Boyd Gaming Corporation. We also support the bill and want to thank the bill sponsor as well as the Gaming Control Board in working with us. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else in Carson City or anybody coming to the table in Las Vegas, so we will go to testimony in opposition to SB 266. If anybody wishes to oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to go to the phone. Is there anybody, BPS, on the phone to give supporting testimony on SB 266?
There are 0 callers at this time, Chair.
All right, then. We will go to opposition testimony. And I don't see anybody coming to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas. So unless anybody has joined us on the phone, BPS?
No, Chair.
All right, then. We will go to neutral testimony. Anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position is invited to the table. And it looks like we have somebody in Las Vegas. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thomasina Fremont, Chief of the Audit Division of the Gaming Control Board, for the record. The board takes a neutral position on this proposed legislation. The board does not have any concerns regarding its ability to administer the proposed changes. And further, the board does not anticipate any direct fiscal impact on the agency. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody on the phone, BPS?
No, Chair.
All right, then. Unless the sponsors would like to make any closing remarks, go ahead.
Chair, Vice Chair, Judiciary Committee, thank you again so much for allowing us the opportunity to present today. I'd like to thank the co-presenters for assisting with today's presentation, and once again, we really appreciate the opportunity to present. I hope that you'll agree with us that it makes sense not to tax money that does not fit in the definition of income and is in fact used to benefit employees, customers, and nonprofit organizations. With that, I urge you to support SB 266, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. I will now close the hearing. I will not close the hearing because Vice Chair Harris has a comment or question.
Madam Chair, if it's okay, I just wanted to ask a quick question of the Gaming Control Board. I apologize for not getting that in the neutral. You mentioned that there was no fiscal impact to the agency. Has anyone done any calculations on what the fiscal impact would be to the state?
Yes, we did do an analysis, and I can tell you that for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 combined, the state had collected around $2 million relating to those the proposed exemptions. If that makes sense.
It does.
Does
Is
that
that?
make sense? It does. Okay.
Thank you. Is that documented anywhere?
Documented?
Yes, ma'am. So generally, we do fiscal notes when things cost us money. And usually that's, let's say, in time or additional staff required. In this instance, we are anticipating that the state will be losing money. And I'm just wondering if there is a negative fiscal note, or I guess that's just a regular fiscal note, or anything on the record that would give policymakers some understanding as to what this decision would cost the state.
Would the Attorney General's office can speak to that?
Good afternoon. Edward McGaw, M-A-G-A-W. I'm with the Nevada Attorney General's office. I represent the Nevada Gaming Control Board. I believe that Mike Alonso could ask for that or answer that question. We did provide the fiscal information to the sponsors of the bill. I'm not familiar with the legislative process. I don't know where that information went, but we have provided, or the board has provided that information.
Okay, if I
apologize for having a non-answer.
No, that's okay. That was a fabulous answer. If I could just either ask the Attorney General's office or the bill sponsor to upload that information as an exhibit to this hearing, that'd be grateful. I'd be forever grateful. Thank you.
All right. And unless there are other comments or questions, Senator Stone.
I'll just add a quick one. I'll just say that was revenue that the state has been receiving that they really should not have been entitled to because it really wasn't income for the casinos. And I'm hoping with the passage of this bill that we're going to see the casinos continue to do their philanthropic efforts throughout Nevada. And I appreciate them being here today and for all their philanthropic programs that they've had over the years helping so many people in the state. Thank you.
All right. Seeing nothing further, I will now close the hearing on SB 266, and that brings us to our final item on the agenda, public comment. If there's anybody here to give public comment in person in Carson City or Las Vegas, now is the time to come forward. And let's see, BPS, is there anybody on the phone to make public comment?
There are no callers at this time to make a public comment.
All right, then that brings us to the end of our meeting. We will be meeting again tomorrow at 1 p.m. And until that time, we are adjourned.